career. I think that with the quarterbacks this year, they're more mobile, they're younger, they're more adaptable to Matt Canada's offense. I think that there was a struggle last season between what Ben Roethlisberger wanted to do, what Matt Canada wanted to do. They didn't mesh all the time, and it just created a lot of very frustrating, stagnant offensive situations. Now you get a guy in there, any of the three of them can stretch the field. Maybe not super accurately, but they can do it.
What do you think, Canty?
No, she's absolutely right. There's been a ceiling over the Pittsburgh Steelers offense for the last few years because Ben Roethlisberger, since the arm surgery, hasn't been able to throw the ball down the field, especially outside of the numbers. Not only does that limit productivity in the passing game, but it also changes the looks you face in the run game, limiting that aspect of your football team as well. So I do think that Trubisky or Kenny Pickett could offer a bump in terms of overall production offensively. The biggest question I have is that reshaped offensive line and how that's going to play out. Because, listen, if you're putting a young quarterback behind a suspect offensive line, it's not going to be good for anybody.
The young quarterback would be Kenny Pickett. Mitch Trubisky, who I think will get the first crack at starting, is not quite as young. And coming out of Buffalo, where he's got some of the similar skill sets. I'm not comparing him to Josh Allen. Obviously, he's nowhere near Josh Allen, but some of the similar set of skills, if you will, and we'll see if they're able to utilize those in Pittsburgh. Jeff Darlington, how about the Steelers and their new quarterback situation?
I'm going to steal a phrase that you used when we were talking about the Chiefs. You can be different, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be better. And that's the wonder I have here. I do agree that Big Ben was holding this team back in many ways. And it's not necessarily a knock on him. Like you said, it was the end of his career. They did the respectful thing by bringing him back. I just wonder if Mitch Trubisky or if Kenny Pickett is ready, or if any of these quarterbacks are able to actually take the Steelers to a place that Big Ben wasn't. And that would be obviously a great thing if they did.
Yeah, and well, that is the question. Can this team make a significant playoff run? They have made the playoffs each of the last 2 years, right, but didn't win a game in either of them. And last year only got in because they've added a playoff team at the end. They made the playoffs but didn't have the feel of a legitimate contender. The question is, can this team be a legitimate contender this year? I am of the opinion the answer is yes. I don't know how popular an opinion that generally is, Chris Canty, but I'm of the opinion that this team with that defense, with Najee Harris, with that receiving core, and just enough quarterback play, I am of the opinion the Steelers are a legitimate playoff team this year.
They still got Mike Tomlin.
They still got the best.
They still got the reigning defending sack champ 2 years in a row with T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick. Yeah, this team can make the playoffs and they can win playoff games. I'm buying into the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're talking about a franchise since 2016 that's got 3 division titles, 4 playoff appearances, and they've never finished worse than second in the AFC North. Let that sink in for a minute. I can't dismiss the Pittsburgh Steelers as a true contender, and we'll have to see what happens at the quarterback position, but that defense is going to give that offense a lot of runway to figure things out.
That actually is a good place for me to leave it here with you, Brooke. What is the expectation relative to the quarterback situation? They bring in Trubisky. He's getting some money, but not huge money. They draft Pickett in the first round. Mason Rudolph is still there. What is the expectation as far as the pecking order?
I mean, Grady, from the conversations that I've had with the organization, I believe that Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starting quarterback. He's kind of the starting quarterback until further notice. And that's also based on what I saw in OTs and minicamps. Mitch Trubisky has taken first-team reps every single time. Mason Rudolph second, Kenny Pickett third. Yes, they're trying to be methodical in the way they bring Kenny Pickett along, but they're not going to rush him. They don't have a bad option in Mitch Trubisky to start, and he doesn't have to be the one to take them to the playoffs, to take them to a run. That guy could be Najee Harris. Mitch Trubisky just has to give them something better than what they had a year ago.
All right, we'll keep an eye on all of that. In the meantime, more football as we continue in just a moment, because the most desirable free agent in the entire sport has put together a list. And wait until you hear which team.
MVP year. I'm going to say worse, but I would say worse even if he was a 26-year-old coming off of one of his best seasons. So worse, but not bad.
That's understandable and well explained. Canty, Aaron Rodgers, better or worse?
He's going to be better, Greedy, and what I mean by that is not necessarily production, but more high-level winning, especially when it matters most in the postseason. He's got a couple of things working against him, new offensive coordinator, and he lost Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the National Football League. But I think those things lend themselves to more variety in the offense, more balance. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones taking pressure on him. Big question mark is the health of the 2 offensive tackles. Seeing if those guys can bounce back. If they can, he'll be better.
Okay, you know I think that's crazy. Brooke, will Patrick Mahomes be better or worse this season?
I think he's going to be better, and I know what you're thinking, but he lost Tyreek Hill. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure, because the biggest criticism of Patrick Mahomes last season was that he needed to get back to the basics. When you lose a guy like Tyreek Hill, who you could do all those things with, that forces you to get back to the basics. I think he's better because of it.
Okay, so hold on. I'm sorry. I need to call a timeout. Get Darlington in here. All right, again, I'm just an observer of the passing scene. But generally speaking, it has been my observation, teams and players don't get better when their best players walk out the door. So Tyreek Hill walks out the door. How does Patrick Mahomes get better without a guy who in his own right is the most dynamic threat in the NFL?
Well, Greeny, he's still got some pretty good pieces around him. Think about this. Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the National Football League. Well, according to Jeremy Fowler's list, he's the second best tight end in the National Football League, but pretty good. But he's also got Andy Reid. And since Andy Reid has been there, the Kansas City Chiefs have been a really good football team. You're talking about 6 consecutive division titles. You're talking about making the postseason 8 of the last 9 years. This team is going to have an opportunity to compete at a high level. Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes are good enough to be able to figure out life without Tyreek Hill.
I understand that, but I didn't ask you if they were going to be good. I asked you if he's going to be better, and you're saying he's going to. Well, you said, Brooke, that he's.
That was me. Yeah.
Well, you said he's going to be better, and the same way that you said that Aaron Rodgers is going to be better with Devontae Adams. And again, all I am is an observer, but that sounds ridiculous to me.
Look, I think based on conversations I've had with folks in the organization, people who know what was going on behind the scenes, I think that this is a situation of addition by subtraction. I think that maybe there were some cracks that were forming between Tyreek Hill's relationship with the Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes, and you can see that in the podcast conversations that he's had this summer when he says something like, they've got to get me the pill, they've got to get me the ball. I looked, he had 159 targets last year, the most that he's had in Kansas City, 111 receptions, and he needs to get the ball more. I mean, I think that there was some discontent there. You lose him, you add in a young guy like Sky Moore, you add in Juju Smith-Schuster. I just think it's going to be a better vibe overall, and I think that this is going to work out better for Mahomes.
Well, that is an interesting wrinkle. Darlington, what do we think?
Look, I've talked to Patrick Mahomes about this, and I understand his optimism, and I'm not challenging in the sense that I know more than him. He absolutely does. He thinks that he's going to have these big-bodied receivers that he can spread the ball around to, and I agree. I think that he can be successful in a different way, and he believes that for sure. The only thing that I would challenge there is it's really good to have the big-bodied receivers and also a guy to go over the top to kind of pull that coverage back. So I'm with you, sort of. I think it's tough to remove a guy like Tyreek Hill and be better, but I will say that Patrick Mahomes thinks that he can be better in a different way, if that makes sense.
Well, it's one thing to be different. It's another thing entirely to be better, and I would say the same thing about what's happening in Green Bay. Let me leave that there for the moment because there's another situation I want to get to, and Brooke, it's one you're very familiar with. That's in Pittsburgh, as you are our Steelers beat reporter and insider, a team in search of a new quarterback, of course, after the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger. Now, our colleague, our buddy RG3, was on the SiriusXM Blitz program. He made some fascinating comments on Pittsburgh's quarterback situation. Speaking of getting better after losing a legend, he said, I believe that Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, even Mason Rudolph at this point would give the Steelers